I walked into the conference room and realized every single person had stopped talking the second I entered. Their eyes flicked away, avoiding mine. My stomach dropped. That was the exact moment I knew they had turned on me. Hey, before I tell you how a simple mistake at work cost me everything, my job, my reputation, my sanity, don't forget to subscribe if you like real, dramatic stories that hit hard and stick with you. This one? You won't believe how it ends. I wasn't always the office outcast. Just a few months ago, I was thriving, mid-level manager at a mid-sized marketing firm in Chicago. My numbers were strong. I hit every quarterly goal. I mentored junior employees. I stayed late, came in early. I was the guy people came to when things needed fixing. Then came Ashley. New hire. Sparkling resume. All smiles and oops giggles when she missed deadlines. At first, I didn't think much of it. She was friendly, maybe too friendly. But I noticed something strange. She started copying my ideas. Word for word. Pitches, taglines, even my formatting. I confronted her in private, trying to be civil. She laughed it off, said we must just think alike. 2 weeks later, I was called into HR. There was a formal complaint against me. Ashley accused me of harassment and intimidation. My jaw hit the floor. It was a lie, a blatant, dangerous lie. But nobody in the room seemed surprised. As I looked into the cold, rehearsed eyes of the HR manager, I realized this wasn't just about Ashley. Someone had been planning this for a while. The HR meeting felt more like a sentencing than a conversation. They kept repeating phrases like alleged behavior and creating a hostile environment, but no one was listening to my side. I asked for specifics. What had I supposedly done? Who else had complaints? The answers were vague, deliberately so. It was like they already had the outcome decided before I walked in. Ashley wasn't even in the room. I walked out dazed, trying to process it. I'd spent 5 years building a solid reputation. No warnings. No write-ups. Just performance awards and thank you emails from upper management. Now I was walking around the office, wondering who believed the lies and who didn't carry their way. That week, everything shifted. People stopped making eye contact. I'd enter a room, and conversations would die. Meetings I used to lead were reassigned. Tasks quietly taken off my plate. Suddenly, I wasn't CC'd on client updates. I was frozen out, but no one said a word. The worst part? My so-called friend at work, Tyler, the guy I thought had my back, acted like nothing was happening. I pulled him aside and asked if he knew anything. He looked nervous, then said, "I think you should talk to HR again. This could get worse." Worse? That night, I stayed late, hoping to get some quiet work done. Around 8:30, I heard voices coming from the break room. I crept closer. It was Tyler. And Ashley. Laughing. Loudly. Joking about how he actually believed he was safe. I felt like I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just workplace drama. It was a setup. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, replaying everything. Every conversation. Every meeting. Every offhand comment Ashley had made in the weeks leading up to the HR meeting. It was like a puzzle I hadn't realized I was solving until it was too late. By morning, one thing was clear: I had to protect myself. If they were trying to push me out, I wasn't going down quietly. I started documenting everything. I created a private folder on a personal drive, backed up every email, saved calendar invites, even took notes after every interaction. It felt paranoid. Until the next blow landed. An official notice from HR: I was being placed under internal review pending an investigation. That's when it got ugly. People I'd trained and supported were now avoiding me like I was contagious. One intern, Sam, even walked out of the elevator when I stepped in. No words. Just walked out. But the part that broke me? The senior partner, Marissa, who had once promised me a promotion in the next round, suddenly acted like I was invisible. I caught her smiling in a meeting where Ashley presented one of my campaign ideas, an idea I'd pitched in private, weeks earlier. Ashley had stolen it. Again. But this time, she got the credit. Applause. High fives. I clenched my fists under the table. After the meeting, I confronted Marissa, gently. I reminded her of where the idea originated. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "Maybe you should focus more on clearing your name than claiming credit." That's when I knew I wasn't just being gaslit by coworkers. Leadership was in on it. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, walking through an office I no longer recognized. Every interaction felt staged. Every smile was fake. Every silence felt dangerous. I kept up the act, showing up every day, working like nothing was wrong, but inside, I was unraveling. I started having panic attacks before work. I'd sit in my car, gripping the steering wheel, trying to convince myself to go inside. I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. I kept hearing Ashley's voice in the break room, mocking me with Tyler. I kept seeing Marissa's cold, dismissive stare. I started to wonder if I had done something wrong, maybe I'd missed some social cue, some unspoken rule. That's how effective the gaslighting was. One day, I opened my inbox and found something strange, a calendar invite for a strategy session with a client I hadn't worked with in months. I clicked through out of habit. And there it was. An internal email thread I wasn't supposed to see. It was between Ashley, Tyler, and two mid-level managers. They were planning a restructure of my department. Talking about how Ashley would take the lead once the transition is clean. Tyler jokingly said, "We just need him to crack a little more. HR's got everything teed up." My hands shook. I don't know if someone screwed up the invite or if someone sent it to me on purpose, but it confirmed what I feared. This wasn't personal incompetence. This was a full-blown takedown. And the worst part? They were close to winning. I knew I couldn't go to HR, they were already part of it. And confronting Ashley or Tyler would just give them more fuel. So I did the only thing I could think of, I called in sick. Not because I was tired. Because I needed time to plan. That day, I reached out to an old mentor, Diane, a former director who had left the company a year earlier. She always saw through the corporate bull and had warned me, more than once, that the office had a rot at the top. When I told her everything, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something I'll never forget. "They've been grooming Ashley to replace you since before she was even hired. You were never part of their long-term plan. You were just the stepping stone." The words hit like a slap. I asked her what I could do. She told me something bold: go above them. Document everything. Collect receipts. And if you want to stop them, don't fight them in their playground. Take it to the people who actually care about the company's liability. The legal department. I hadn't even considered it. But Diane was right. If Ashley, Tyler, and the others were setting me up, especially using false claims and stealing intellectual property, there was risk for the company. Serious risk. So I compiled everything. Email drafts and campaign files with metadata. Timeline logs of Ashley's plagiarism. Notes from HR meetings. Screenshots of the private email thread. And then I found the real bombshell. A recorded Zoom call. One where Tyler forgot to stop recording. And openly discussed pushing me out before Q4 reviews. I stared at the file. This wasn't just office politics anymore. This was evidence of corporate sabotage. I didn't sleep that night, again. But this time, it wasn't fear keeping me up, it was adrenaline. For the first time in weeks, I had something they didn't expect: leverage. The next morning, I didn't go back to work. Instead, I booked a 10 a.m. meeting with someone from the corporate legal team. Not HR. Not my manager. Legal. When I showed up at their office, the assistant looked surprised. Apparently, no one at my level ever reached out directly. But once I said the words evidence of coordinated employee misconduct, harassment, and fraud, I was in a chair within 5 minutes. I laid it all out. Calm. Factual. Professional. I didn't embellish, didn't dramatize, just showed them the timeline, the emails, the campaign theft, and the damning Zoom clip. I watched their faces change in real time. By the end of the meeting, one of the attorneys asked me, "Do you have this backed up anywhere else?" I nodded. Multiple places. I wasn't taking chances. They said they'd investigate immediately, and that I should refrain from discussing this with anyone at the office. When I walked out, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. But that hope didn't last long. Because the next morning, I woke up to a system alert. My company login? Disabled. I tried to call IT, no answer. Tried to reach HR, straight to voicemail. I didn't even get an email. Just locked out. My hands were shaking as I realized what had just happened. They were trying to fire me, before legal could finish their investigation. I stared at my laptop screen in disbelief. No warning. No notice. Just a silent shutdown of my digital existence at the company. It was like they were trying to erase me, before I could become a bigger problem. But what they didn't know was that I'd already anticipated this move. The night before, I had sent everything, every document, every recording, every timestamped note, to the legal team via encrypted drive. I even included a cover letter, outlining the timeline and naming names. I made sure they had it before the locks started clicking shut. Still, it hit me hard. This company I had given 5 years of my life to had thrown me out like garbage. But then, something unexpected happened. At around 2 p.m., I got a call from an unfamiliar number. It was a senior legal counsel, not the one I met with. She sounded calm, but serious. "Can you talk privately?" she asked. I shut my bedroom door and sat on the floor, clutching my phone like it was a lifeline. She told me that they had received and reviewed the materials, and that my termination, or whatever they were trying to call it, was highly irregular. She said, "We're placing your case under immediate legal hold. You are not to be contacted, terminated, or retaliated against in any form." Then she dropped the real bomb. "There's already been an internal complaint against Ashley. By another employee. You're not the first." My heart skipped. I wasn't alone? She couldn't say much more, only that the situation was now under review at the executive level. But her last sentence stuck with me. "Thank you for coming forward. You may have just exposed something much bigger than yourself." And just like that, I realized. This wasn't just my fight anymore. The days that followed were excruciating. I was told not to speak to anyone from the company, but my phone kept buzzing. Missed calls from Tyler. A vague "Hey, can we talk?" email from Ashley's personal account. Even Marissa left a cold, clipped voicemail. Let's not make this uglier than it needs to be. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I stayed quiet, documented everything, and waited. I knew better than to make the next move. This wasn't about proving my point anymore. It was about letting the truth rise without giving them a single excuse to paint me as unstable or vengeful. Then, on the 5th day, it all blew open. I got an official email from corporate legal. An internal audit had confirmed multiple violations of company policy by several employees, including Ashley and Tyler. Misuse of confidential data, intellectual property theft, manipulation of HR processes, and worse, retaliation against a whistleblower. They didn't name me directly, but the phrasing was clear. They were referring to my case. Within 24 hours, Ashley was terminated. Not asked to resign. Not quietly transitioned. Fired. Immediately. Tyler was suspended pending further investigation. Marissa? She stepped down, effective immediately, though I wouldn't be surprised if that was a forced exit with a papered-over press release. But here's what I didn't expect. Dozens of coworkers started reaching out. People I hadn't spoken to in weeks. Apologies. Confessions. One intern admitted Ashley had threatened to tank his evaluation if he didn't go along with the story. The illusion shattered. They hadn't just targeted me. They'd built a culture of fear, and I had unknowingly lit the match that burned it down. It was surreal, watching the narrative unravel. For weeks, I was painted as the villain. The unstable one. The problem. And now, people were tripping over themselves to rewrite the story. A junior analyst who once avoided eye contact stopped me outside a coffee shop near the office. She said, "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I thought they'd come for me next." I didn't blame her. That was the power of manipulation. Ashley didn't just lie, she built alliances through fear, charisma, and strategic charm. She knew how to read people, how to bend perception just enough to make herself look like the victim in every room she entered. And I was finally beginning to understand the full scope of the damage. The legal team asked if I'd be willing to provide a formal statement as part of their investigation. I agreed. They arranged a private Zoom meeting with 2 compliance officers and an external HR consultant brought in from a third party. It was clear now, this wasn't just about me anymore. It was a full corporate cleanup. But here's what really hit me. In the middle of my testimony, the compliance officer paused and said, "You know, we've reviewed dozens of internal reviews over the last 2 years. And you're the first employee who documented their experience this thoroughly. If others had done the same, we might have caught this sooner." That made my chest tighten. Because deep down, I realized I hadn't just saved myself. I'd saved others who were too scared, too new, too unprotected to speak out. People who might have been the next target. And yet, the damage was still there. The stress. The betrayal. The months I spent doubting my own sanity. You don't walk away from that unchanged. The company offered to reinstate me. Full access, title restored, back pay for the days I was locked out. They even dangled a promotion, director of strategy. It was the kind of position I'd worked toward for years. But I didn't take it. I told them I needed time to think, and I meant it. Because as tempting as it was to return and triumph, something inside me had shifted. I couldn't unsee what I'd been through. The fake smiles, the quiet betrayals, the way people who once praised me turned cold the second it was convenient. I met with Diane again. My mentor, over lunch. She looked proud, but also concerned. She said, "You won a battle, but don't forget what kind of war this place breeds." She wasn't wrong. Later that week, I took a walk through the park near my apartment and sat on a bench, watching people go by. It hit me how much I had been carrying. The anxiety. The pressure to prove myself. The fear of slipping, even a little, because I knew people like Ashley were always watching. And I started to ask myself, why go back at all? Why return to a place that only valued me after I became a legal liability? That night, I opened a fresh Word doc and started outlining a business plan. I'd always wanted to start my own consultancy, creative strategy, leadership training, a company that actually prized integrity. Suddenly, the idea didn't feel like a dream. It felt like freedom. And for the first time in months, I smiled without hesitation. Because I finally understood something no office politics could ever take away. Sometimes, the best revenge is walking away on your own terms. Starting over felt terrifying and exhilarating all at once. I spent nights researching, networking, and drafting plans. I reached out to former colleagues and even some clients who'd worked with me before. The response surprised me. People wanted to support me. They respected what I had gone through and believed in my vision for something different. But even as I built my new path, the scars of the past lingered. I caught myself second-guessing every decision, wondering if I was missing a hidden trap. Old habits die hard, especially after being burned by people you thought you could trust. Then, one afternoon, I got an unexpected email. It was from Tyler. He wanted to meet. My first instinct was to ignore it. But curiosity won. I agreed. When we met, it wasn't the hostile confrontation I expected. Instead, Tyler looked defeated, like the weight of what he'd done was crushing him. He apologized. Said he got swept up in something bigger than himself. That he realized too late how toxic it all had become. He even admitted Ashley had manipulated him as much as anyone. It was a strange moment. Part relief, part confusion. I told him forgiveness wasn't immediate, but maybe, down the line, possible. We agreed to keep the conversation open but distant. This meeting didn't erase the past. But it reminded me one thing: sometimes, the hardest battles are fought not just against others, but within yourself. As the months passed, my new consultancy slowly gained traction. I wasn't just selling services, I was building a community. A place where honesty mattered, where people didn't have to watch their backs or fear the next betrayal. It was everything my old job wasn't. But the emotional toll of the past still echoed. There were nights I woke up replaying conversations, wondering if I had missed signs, if I could have done more to stop Ashley sooner. The fear of being blindsided never fully left me. One day, I received an unexpected message on LinkedIn. It was from Marissa, the former senior partner who had stepped down during the scandal. She wrote, "I've made mistakes. I underestimated how deep the problem was, and I'm sorry for how it affected you. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." I stared at the message, conflicted. Part of me wanted to lash out, to remind her of everything she ignored. But another part wanted closure. After a long pause, I replied simply, "Thank you. I hope we can both learn from this." That message was a turning point. Because, in the end, the most unexpected part of surviving toxic workplaces isn't just fighting back, it's finding a way to heal, even with those who hurt you. Healing wasn't a straight line. Some days, the memories hit me like a punch in the gut, the whispered rumors, the cold shoulders, the betrayal disguised as teamwork. It was exhausting. But then, something surprising happened. I started receiving messages from people who had left that toxic company, some who had been silent victims, others who'd been complicit but wanted to change. They shared their stories, their struggles, their hopes for something better. Suddenly, I realized my story wasn't just mine. It was part of a larger pattern, a cycle many workplaces fall into when ambition overshadows empathy, and power blinds people to ethics. With that realization came purpose. I began speaking at local business events, sharing my experience not as a victim, but as someone who had navigated the darkness and found a way out. My message was simple. You don't have to accept toxicity as the price of success. The feedback was overwhelming. People thanked me for giving words to what they'd felt but couldn't say. Some started reaching out privately, seeking advice on standing up in their own toxic environments. It was empowering and humbling. In the end, my darkest workplace experience became the foundation for a new mission: to help others recognize the signs, protect themselves, and, most importantly, reclaim their worth. But I won't lie, sometimes the past still haunts me. There are moments when I catch myself doubting my own instincts, when old fears creep back, whispering that people can't be trusted, that ambition always breeds betrayal. And that's when I remind myself. I survived. I fought back. I walked away stronger. I also learned something crucial: boundaries are not just rules for others, but promises to yourself. To protect your peace. To honor your worth. That means knowing when to fight, and when to let go. When to speak up, and when to walk away. When to trust, and when to guard your heart. It's not easy. But it's necessary. Because toxic workplaces don't just hurt your career. They hurt your soul. And healing is an act of rebellion. Today, I'm not just a survivor of workplace drama, I'm a reminder that even in the darkest places, we have the power to rewrite the story. To reclaim control. To build something better. So here's what I want you to take away from my story. No job is worth sacrificing your mental health or self-respect. No office politics should make you question your value. And no betrayal, no matter how deep, should silence your voice. If you're stuck in a toxic environment, remember you're not alone. There's always a way out. Sometimes it means fighting. Sometimes it means walking away. But it always means putting yourself first. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you or gave you hope, please subscribe for more real stories and honest conversations. Sharing these experiences helps us all heal and grow stronger. And if you've been through something similar, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Because together, we're not just surviving, we're thriving. Remember, your worth isn't defined by anyone else's story.